Right, if we're all ready to go, I'm happy to kick off. Just before we start, a couple of things to note. I, fortunately or otherwise, fortunately I think, have had my COVID vaccination, and so feel a bit ropey.
Yeah.
We're grateful to have had it.
Yes.
and the health centre did a fantastic job.
Good.
But if I kind of lose my train of thought, apologies. I sort of have a headache and feel a bit ropey, but I'm. I did also mean to put in a motion for this meeting, which is too late to do now, but would like to consider at the next meeting a motion around allowing attendees to ask questions of this committee, because it feels to me like one of the few committees that doesn't allow the public to ask questions out.
Oh, look, he's talking about public speaking.
Hi, Maria. Thanks.
Yeah, is that Maria? Yeah.
Yeah, Maria's. And I did, yeah. I'd like to put that on the agenda for next time if we can, and I'll try and raise the motion between here and there, so we can agree it.
Councillor Barker, sorry, could I just come in at this point? It's actually down to the chair's discretion. If a member of the public wants to ask something at the start of the meeting, if they make themselves aware, make you aware, it's down to the discretion of the chair to allow a member of the public to speak during the meeting. So you don't need a motion.
That's great. I mean, I'm very much open to us taking questions. I think we do in most other committees, and I think it's good for us to be transparent. So in that spirit, then let's start with that before we move on from the formal agenda. I think Carissa and Maria, you're the only two members of the public in the meeting today. Do either of you have a question or anything you'd like to talk through before we?
I don't have anything to say, but thank you, Chris, because it would be useful. It's usually on the front of the agenda that the public will have right to speak, and it never is on policy and finance. So it's not clear to the public that they are allowed to speak. So thank you.
Yeah.
Add that in. Yeah.
We'll have that changed. Chris.
Thank you. Good evening, all. I believe you'll be looking later on in confirming the minutes of 5th January lottery working group. In the minutes, 9th February lottery working group, you'll be looking at that.
Yes.
In those minutes, 9th February is mention of minutes of the previous meeting, 5th January. I wonder where they are. I haven't seen those as yet. And our minutes going to continue to be available on the website, please.
So all minutes of public meetings should be on the website, Chris. So we'll look into that, and we'll have a look at that as we run through that item on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. If there's nothing else, we'll move on then. Apologies for absence. I believe we've had apologies from both councillors Irwin and Ben Martin. I don't think there's anyone else to have had apologies from, so we can move on as we're all here otherwise. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest for any items listed on the agenda this evening from anyone? No. Okay, happy to move on. Minutes from the previous meeting and matters arising. Were the minutes attached to this meeting? Because I couldn't.
No, by the looks of it, they're not attached to the. No. They've been to full count.
Okay. Does everyone have a copy of the minutes?
No.
I think, as Louise said, that we, in effect, sign these off by virtue of them going to the full council, which they did at the beginning of this month. So they have been reviewed, and the recommendations that were made on those have been talked through by the full council. Does that mean we don't need to sign them off now, or do we still need to sign them off as a matter of record?
Yeah, we usually do as a matter of record, please.
Okay, I'm going to have to go and find them. If you bear
Just
with
put a
me.
link in the chat box to them.
Can I ask the town clerk on 196, which was month-end financial report? We noted a difference between trial balance and detailed balance. I don't know if that's because they were drawn on different days and there was a transfer between earmarked reserves, but did we get a final answer on that?
Not yet on that one, no.
Okay. If we could add that to
Yes, it's on my list with
next
Emma.
meeting,
So
yeah, that would be great. Okay. Okay, other than that, I'm fairly happy with them and happy to propose that we accept them. Would anyone like to second that? Councillor Martin, thank you. Can we vote on that? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Councillor Barker, could I note at the last meeting I declared a non-pecuniary interest against the area committee item, so I think I should do that again, as I'm the vice chair of the Swale area Eastern area committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Was noted.
Yeah.
Moving on then, item agenda number 4, month-end financial reports. So we haven't got any month-end financial reports to review. This meeting is happening earlier than it would usually do in the month because it conflicts with a couple of other committee meetings that had to go in next week, including one for the lottery, and so we've had to bring this forward. As a consequence, the reports haven't been completed for January, and so in the March meeting we will run through both reports for January and February then. So unless there are any thoughts or comments on that, I propose we move on to the work in progress report. Super. Okay, moving on, work in progress report. Now I know that there are a couple of things that I think we need to pick up from this, and the town clerk would like to talk us through. Do you want to start with that, town clerk?
thank you. The item on your list there, it's called Scanner, but it's the Guildhall Works. So it's the work in progress report that's from Adam. And I'd like a decision tonight, if possible, recommendation, please. We've just had the windows replaced, as some of you may have noticed.
Yes.
And they do now need painting inside, is the first stage that we're looking at. And there's 3 quotes that have been given. One is for 4,000, the other is for 3,000 plus materials, and the third is slightly cheaper. So my computer isn't going fast enough. Now,
You're frozen.
Adam's comment, he's slightly concerned about the cheaper. Oh, fiddle. Okay, I'm going to turn my camera off in the hope that right, okay. I did warn I was unstable. So
I don't
right.
think you use that word.
So There's 3 quotes. We're looking at the internal windows quote. So we've got one from KN Interiors, which is for 4,000. We've got one from Robert Baines, which is 3,000, but we buy the materials. And then there's the Complete Homes is a quote, and he's quoted 1,875.
Are they all
And
local?
Adam has just said to me he's a little bit concerned about that one. No, Robert Baines is local. I declare an interest. He's done work for me, but he's recently repainted the outside of County Brides. So I know he's done local work.
So which so
And the first one is
there a document we should be reviewing with the quotes in, because the quotes I can see are for heating?
the scanner document. If you go down, it should it's called Scanner. It's called Scanner, and that's got the work in progress, because he's working through the quinquennial report.
Okay, I've got it right at the bottom.
Yeah,
sorry,
it's just called Scanner. And that's got the quotes.
And is it just the internal windows that we're looking at?
Just the internal windows at the moment. The other is quite expensive because it will involve scaffolding for the external and internal. So I'm going to hopefully look for see if we can get some grant funding on that work. But it's just because the windows have been replaced. It's more or less bare wood at the moment. Just thinking about the aesthetics of the inside, particularly when we have our weddings.
Mm-hmm.
And just to confirm, we've currently got 20,000 in our reserves for maintenance. So I think the only local quote that we've got is actually Robert Baines.
Is it for decorating all the windows or just the ones that have been replaced?
Are you able to tell us what the concern about is it the cheap? It looks like it's the cheapest quote. Is it a quality concern, Louise?
Yes. Adam's words were he can't believe that he can do it for that price, and that he's concerned about what the actual paint will be used, because we're using the proper heritage paint. Adam's actually been liaising with John Swale, who was our previous architect consultant on the building.
So just, Town Clerk, if I could, so if I'm reading this correctly, there are 3 quotes and I can read all 3 of them now. One's for 4,000, one's for 2,800 and something or other, and one's for 1,875. In Adam's view, he believes that the quote for 2,000, I'm just getting back to it, sorry, I'll keep
it's the 1,875.
Yeah, but he believes that was too cheap, didn't he? And
yes,
think, but yes, he believes that the quote for 2,465 from Robert Baines is the most appropriate. He thinks that's going to achieve the quality that he expects.
We need.
Yes, that quote is for labour only, and we would get the paint. So those 2 prices, the 4,000.
Okay, but 4,000 includes paint.
1,000 and the 2,500.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
And
yeah. So they are on par really with one another.
Yeah.
I'm of the mind to trust
Adam.
Yeah, I'm of the mind to trust Adam. Really, he knows what's best. That's what we pay him for, to know and understand that. So I'm happy to support that proposal. Does anyone have any other thoughts on it, or?
I'm happy to second it with the same thoughts, Chris.
Yeah.
So just to confirm, you're happy for Adam to make the decision on that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, which I think, if I'm hearing rightly, is for Robert Baines to conduct the work.
Yeah,
2,465, and we will source the materials for him to do that.
Yeah, that's the one, I think. Definitely.
Does anyone have any
Okay, thank you.
other thoughts, questions on that? Do we need to vote on that, Town Clerk?
Yeah.
It would be helpful. I've got a proposer and seconder, if everybody's happy.
If you vote, then
Agree.
super.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the other quote is for the and it's only 2 quotes that we've managed to get, and both electricians have worked for us in the past.
I've missed the quote that we're looking at now. I've got the quotes open, but what's in the top of the scanner document? Which one are we looking at now?
This is a separate document now called the heating.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but in the scanner document, is it the top line? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I've come out of that document now.
I think it is. Don't worry, that's great.
Yes, it is. It is the top line in the in that one.
I note that the first quote is from the end of September. I'm assuming, I mean, most quotes have got a 90-day sort of expiry on them. Are they still happy to honour this pricing?
Yes, they're still both valid.
And does Adam have a preference on this? Who do we use for the heating that we
The heating in the offices is J&S.
Notice the first quote from TKE imagines a fan heater in the large room, and I just wonder whether that will have any noise issues, whereas the other quote is for panel heaters.
I'm not sure about that question, but certainly J&S have quoted for the same type of heating that we've actually got in our offices, and we've not had any issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go with. I mean, are we happy for?
Yeah.
Are you asking if is Adam wanting to make the decision? Are we happy to try and go with the same suppliers we've used before, and we've got confidence in them? They're both much for muchness in price, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of £17.50, I don't think we're going to be.
No.
We are achieving best value, and I would suggest that this committee devolves the actual supplier used to the facilities manager, because it might be that one can do the work before the other or whatever. And for the sake of 20 quid, I don't think we're going to less than £20. I don't think it's worth us belly aching over it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that.
Agree.
Second that. Should we vote on that?
Yeah,
Decision to.
definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes it for the Guildhall. Thank you. And it's just Claire's work in progress report that you've received.
Yeah, I got that.
So we were looking at a different work in progress report across the various committees, weren't we? And the budget spends and so on. Louise, has it not been possible to produce that this month?
No, I'm working on that at the moment. I haven't finished it.
Okay. Understood.
Councillor Barker, would you at this point just like to bring up the savings accounts?
Yes, yes. So this refers to, so thank you for bringing my attention to it, and thank you for doing the work on this. So for the rest of the committee's benefit, I'm sure you remember, I think it was just last month, in fact, that the audit, we were reminded that we have over, I think, £150,000 in general reserves, and that the Financial Services Authority Compensation Scheme mandates that any bank has to cover £85,000 if they go bust. And whilst that's extremely unlikely, the audit recommended that we looked at kind of moving some of our funds around so that we were protected. Town Clerk, I don't know if you want to talk us through the paper and what you've uncovered. I think
I specifically searched for ethical banks, so that's the ones that we've got. Triodos sounded quite good, but they're not taking new accounts at the small rate at the moment. So I don't think it's really worth worrying about what the rates are.
Mm.
Can you?
So our choices are cooperative bank and charity bank. And the charity bank, just so it's got 1 year business fixed rate. I mean, the rates look great, but I'm assuming there are penalties if you needed to retrieve at relatively short notice. I mean, it seems like there are for cooperative bank, but a 3-month notice period is significantly less than 1 year. Is that right? Is that what I'm reading correctly?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
I mean, it would seem to me that I guess the point of the general reserves is to be able to cover unexpected circumstances and be able to cover, your liabilities on the assets you have. And it would feel to me that we would want to be able to withdraw at potentially 95 days notice. Given it's only part of our funding, we can obviously hopefully and potentially manage with the other part of the general reserves we have in any intervening period. But it feels to me that a 95-day notice period is preferable rather than a kind of year or 3-year fix. Does anyone have any thoughts? So Councillor Saunders, sorry, I was not looking at my screen, sorry.
Thank you. I mean, I share your concern about a kind of fixed term account. If we were using that, we'd have to be very careful to make sure it was money that we weren't going to need to draw on. I am a customer of the cooperative bank. I don't know whether I need to declare that. It's kind of there's not much ethical left in it, in my opinion. When we discussed this before, I think we did raise whether we could look at building society, mutuals, building societies. I mean, Nationwide, Skipton are large building societies, and I mean, whether you consider them ethical or not, they're not profit-making organisations, and I'm wondering whether they might give us. I mean, no one's going to give us a fantastic rate at the moment, but whether they might offer more, a slightly wider range of options for us. Because at the moment, if we don't go for the charity bank, we've got to go for the co-op, haven't we?
That makes sense. Any other thoughts or questions?
if I could just say, I'm not necessarily expecting a decision today. These are just examples, so I'm happy to go out and look at more. I'm just finding it difficult with nationwide. Not
I think with your connection struggling again. Sorry to interrupt. You're finding it difficult with nationwide too.
They're not very user friendly.
I mean, if you can persist and try them, it would be good to have, I think, a couple to look at. Was there any? Did we also last time talk about? Because I know that if I'm right in thinking, and Councillor Hook might know this too, Swale manage some of their investments through the county council treasury, whatever department it is, don't they? Is there any work? Is it worth us speaking to them and sort of getting any insight or guidance into what they do?
I don't know if Swale do, but yeah, we definitely could make that approach because they have hundreds of millions in reserve, and I've seen the list of where it's invested, and it's dozens of different banks all over the place. And of course, some not in the UK, and they lost money when the Icelandic bank about 10 or 12 years ago. But that can happen to any bank. You know, it happens in Northern Rock. Money isn't necessarily safe in this country or in other countries. So yeah, we could make that inquiry. I don't know if they would charge us commission or anything, but on the other hand, they might get us a preferential rate. I know that in the past, some organisations have had, other public sector organisations have had their pension funds with KCC to just invest it with them on the sort of argument that we'll get a better return. Do that. Councillor Williams has put in the chat another bank that I don't know the one he's mentioned. I wonder if we probably don't need to put all our eggs in one basket. So it might be, I don't know, Louise, whether you can look at the time scale we need, and maybe some can go with co-op on a shorter return, some with charity bank on a longer return, and or other examples as the case may be.
And £85,000 can stay where it is. Frankly, it doesn't. We're not looking.
Yes, right. Leave 85. Yeah.
Do you think you could explore those couple of options then? So I've heard that we can potentially try and persist with nationwide, and hopefully make our way through the treacle there, and then perhaps approach, as Councillor Williams has helpfully said in the chat, Tide Bank to see what they offer, and then perhaps the Treasury Department or Finance Commercial Department at Kent County Council, and see whether they either could offer us any advice or indeed any services. That would be useful to know. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. One of the thoughts on that, you mentioned earlier Swale. It might be worth asking Swale, because I believe they do a thing where they do like bonds, where they literally loan money to other councils short term. I don't know whether we would want to join in with something like that, but it's probably worth asking Nick Vickers, the finance director there, finance officer, whether there was such a scheme that they would look at for parishes. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me that we're not actually trying to make money out of this exercise. What we're trying to do is to provide ourselves, you know, I guess the dual challenges of trying to, you know, protect our money to a sufficient extent such that we protect ourselves from the bank going bust, but also, you know, have some liquidity and getting access to the money, and that's I think a primary target. But yeah, I mean, Swale, Kent County Council, Tide, nationwide, if we could perhaps explore those again. I mean, we're in no worse position today than we were yesterday, and we were last year, in fact. So there isn't a huge degree of rush on this, and NatWest, to my knowledge, aren't going anywhere. But neither were Northern Rock 2 days before they did. So yeah, but if we could explore those 4 options, I think that'd be really helpful. there's no more. The work in progress report from Claire. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions on that?
If I may, Councillor Barker, I just think it's something we can note because unfortunately at the moment a lot of what's is work going on in the background to prepare for when the government says places can open and people can visit again. To be perfectly honest,
That's a while away. Yeah.
I mean, and that's been the same for a while. I mean, it's probably worth noting on my behalf, at least, that Claire's continues to do some great work in and around the newsletter, but also she did a lot of, helped us a lot on working to get the business surveys out and sorting out the residential surveys and stuff as well. So just like to note my thanks on that. But anybody else have any thoughts or comments? Otherwise, I'm happy to move on from work in progress reports in general.
Yes, looking good.
Gideon's got his hand up.
Sorry, I'm sharing both screens at the moment, and so I'm covering my video up. Apologies, Councillor Saunders.
It was just a question, really. The safety advisory group. I'd probably missed this at some stage. Who is that, and is it our group or is it some other group? It's kind of referred to a couple of times in the document.
If I may just come in on that point, it's Swale Borough Council headed by Victoria Hadfield. She heads the group that looks into events.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts?
No,
Happy to move on.
Yeah.
Super, thank you. Item number 6 then, Faversham and District Community Lottery, to receive minutes of the Lottery Working Group.
Yes. Article in the newspaper today was good.
Do you want me to speak to this, Chris, Mr. Chair?
Councillor Saunders, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think Louise will speak to the options paper, but the key things to come out of the working group were firstly the position with good causes that have enrolled. So when we met, there were 30 good causes that have signed up. I presume that figure's gone up a bit since then. Second thing is we agreed a marketing plan, which includes a range of advertising, and we're going to have banners on display. As the Mayor said, we had a good bit of press in the paper today. And then the final thing we discussed was having a central community fund and whether 50 or 60% of the money should go to the good causes. And that's the paper which Louise was going to speak to.
Town Clerk, do you want to take us through the options there?
Just the way it's structured at the moment is that the good cause that signs up, they get 50p out of the pound, and then an additional 10p would go to the community fund. But that is decision. We can choose where that 10p goes. It can either just stay with the community group or it can go to the general fund. So it's really that choice about the 10p. So you've got the Faversham and District Community Fund. It's slightly confusing because obviously you've got the Faversham and District Lottery, but within that lottery there is a community fund that is a general fund, and the town council or it will also get 10p for every other ticket sale. So the decision really that you can make is letting the good cause have 60p out of the pound. I hope that makes sense.
50p.
It does. We broke up slightly, but it does make sense. And the paper's relatively clear. One of the questions I have is it this committee to make that decision, or should we make that decision as a town council? I'm comfortable that we make it, but I don't know if we need to. Councillor Martin?
I think we should put a view to town council on this, bearing in mind that we initially signed up to the 50p for the causes and then 10p going into the general fund, and that was how it was sold to us as a council.
Yes.
I think it's more around how would that fund be distributed that questions would be asked, and that's why we've put this to this committee, is because there is an opinion that there are two schools of thought. One is that those that are actually sponsoring the lottery by taking a page and doing all the work and helping get people to join it could benefit from the community fund, or they could have the extra 10p in the pound going direct to themselves. My view is that by having it in the community general fund, as it were, you would allow those groups, that you would certainly give some weight to the fact that the people are involved. But I'm also very conscious that there are some groups whose constitutions do not allow them to join a lottery. And particularly some of the youth groups, there are quite stringent rules around any form of gambling, including lotteries, to the fact that they have to get permission from somebody higher up the chain to have a raffle, pretty much. So I'm conscious of that, and I think those of us on that working panel were of the opinion that we'd like your input into how you would see it happening. You know, we are looking at having an independent panel to distribute the funds, because we do not want to confuse. We're suggesting we shouldn't confuse the lottery funds, community lottery funds, with our own town council grants. They're two separate things, and that's something that could confuse applicants if we don't do it in the right way. And that's why this paper's been brought. I welcome other councillors using that.
Councillor Saunders.
I'll talk to the 50% or 60%. I think as we had personally, and not got any axe to grind with this, as we had the discussion in the working group, I became more positive about the idea of giving all of the 60% to those organisations that were participants, partly because it will encourage more organisations to get involved, and therefore will overall generate more funding. Secondly, it's probably slightly administratively simpler and cleaner for us, but it doesn't. But we still are able to raise funds. We're still able to have a general fund, and we can promote that and try and build the funding of that. So I would tend to favour 60%, but as Councillor Martin said, I think we were a small group, and we were keen to get other views before we took a decision.
Councillor Reynolds. I mean, Councillor Reynolds, I think you were probably part of that group as well anyway, weren't you? So
yes, I was. I think 60% is right, because there will still be some funds over that we could allocate. As Councillor Martin said, you know, there are some of the smaller cadet groups and things that can't enter, which is a shame. So we'd still have some fund to be able to allocate, wouldn't we? So I think the 60% would encourage more, hopefully, to take part and support their particular organisation that they're wanting to support. And then we would have, obviously, the other funds coming in. It wouldn't be as much if we do it that way, but there would still be an amount there to be able to sort of use. So I think, yeah, I would go with 60%.
I'm inclined to agree. I think we should maximise the share that goes to charities and good causes of one sort or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to support that.
Mm.
In that case, let's go with that then. So that's option one.
Yes.
And we can recommend that to the town council, or if we, I don't know whether we need to or not, Louise, but we can ask Gatherwell to do the necessary on that, can't we?
Yes, yeah. I'll
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to vote on that
speak together well.
recommendation?
Yeah. Great.
We need to vote on that recommendation, option one.
Yes, please.
I'm happy to second. We'll
Yeah, all right.
Agreed. Thank you. Is there anything else we want to cover off on the lottery group? So in which case, Heritage Working Group, to receive the minutes of the Heritage Working Group. Is that something, Councillor Martin, you could?
Sorry, yes, I can talk to this. The first thing I think is is item one on that minute.
Yes.
A proposal for the relocation of the Visitor Information Centre. The Faversham Society board noted the good footfall when they had events at the marketplace, and there's talk of having a discussion around whether the Visitor Information Centre and the shop that is currently in 12 Preston Street come into 12 Marketplace, into a section at the front. It suggested it would be a third or a quarter, a third maximum would be a quarter, and the remaining space would be continued to be used for exhibitions and meetings. My view is that that is something that we as a council should work up, because one, it provides us with something going on in 12 Marketplace pretty much continually.
Mm.
Two, it once the I'll call it the Magna Carta exhibition is set up, it may well mean that we do not have to provide staff full time for that particular thing, because there will be people there who can direct people through. We wouldn't lose. I think a lot of the exhibitions that we've had have relied on wall space rather than exhibition in the actual centre of the room, as it were.
Mm.
So I think that could be, that wouldn't change, because in effect, where if you used, and I would assume we would use the left hand side of, as you in the main doors for the VIC and through to the Magna Carta exhibition, you'd actually not lose anything, because where the doors are and where the front window is, you're only moving a wall sort of 6-7 feet the other way. You don't lose anything. If anything, you might gain a bit of space for exhibition in that manner. And I just think it's something that it could create a useful point. Most people tend to visit the town centre first and the Guildhall. It's by the nearest main car park.
Yeah.
It's relatively close to where visitors turn up for Shepherd Neame tours. It puts it, I think it would be beneficial for both. Bearing in mind that the Faversham Society is a registered charity, and therefore any part of the building that we sublet, for want of a better way of putting it, to them would not be liable to business rates. So we could actually find that by them doing that, we would reduce our business rates liability. And depending on exactly how that is done, that could be more use. I think from the society's point of view, they, as it was expressed to me, is that they feel that it would allow them to do a bit more with the Fleur de Lis as a museum, and it would help point people in the right directions for the various things they want.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I couldn't find any reason not to recommend that we work with them to have a look at whether this is a possibility or not. And that's why I put it there. And we are suggesting that a full proposal be worked up by Mr. Goodwin on behalf of the Faversham Society Board and Louise, and then brought along to the next Policy and Finance Committee, something a little bit more concrete, shall we say.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Absolutely, definitely in favour. Definitely, it seems to me, you know, almost an ideal solution to the fact that number 12 always looks empty, except when there's an event, an exhibition. But we wouldn't want to lose that exhibition space. It is absolutely brilliant in the centre of town. But by taking off just a small section, I couldn't quite right. I think most exhibitions can manage very well there. I think it will make it seem a more lively place as well all the time. I'm definitely, in favour.
Councillor Saunders, any thoughts?
I'm interested in it too. I can see a lot of attraction because I think it'll be a good location for the Visitor Information Centre. And I think it will help the exhibitions and other things that we might have going on, because people will come into the centre, you know, and see the exhibition maybe as well. I think I'm not clear on whether it's proposed that the Faversham Society, if they take over a quarter or a third of space, are going to make a contribution to the running costs of the building, the business rates, the heat, the light, the water.
Yeah, they will.
Or pay rent. And I think we need to explore that with them, because clearly there'll be a saving for the Faversham Society because they won't have those costs on their present space. But I think we need to find that out before we make any decision.
It's just so I understand it. I mean, there are financial considerations covered in the paper themselves, aren't they? And the recommendation tonight is only that a working group explore this opportunity. And so we couldn't, as a group anyway, I think, agree to going ahead without going to full council. And it's just us agreeing that, you know, a more detailed review.
Want it to go. Yeah,
that feels sensible to me. I mean,
definitely.
You know, we have a lot of common aims and ambitions for the town as the Faversham Society, who share our ambition and joy of Faversham. So, sorry, Councillor Saunders, you haven't had a chance to speak.
I mean, I think there's a strong logic to the proposal. Like the mayor, I'd want us to make sure we retain the exhibition space, and that it was a community exhibition space, not just a heritage exhibition space. But I think it clearly having a form of reception there would increase our efficiency as a town council. It would release staff to do other things. And my sense from the general report is that, you know, progress is now being made towards being able to exhibit the Magna Carta in terms of getting funding. So you know, that supports it. So I mean, the recommendation that it's explored further, I think is a sensible one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my own thoughts on this. So firstly, I broadly support the recommendation. I mean, we are, I think, in a week away from receiving the resident survey report, which I think I've seen early iterations which suggest that, you know, community spaces are of interest to the residents of Faversham, and therefore it is useful for us to retain some community space. We'll hopefully see that be borne out in the residents of next week potentially. And it's certainly been incredibly useful over the course of the neighbourhood plan as a space to kind of show and demonstrate what, you know, what the town has to offer. So and that's outside all of the exhibitions that it's hosted for the, you know, the Camera Society and so on. So it would be good to retain that, and I think if that's part of the brief of the recommendation for them to look at, then that would be really useful. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just to clarify one of the discussions that we had, one of the things we did say was we would not be handing the exhibition space over from a management point of view because of exactly the things that you just mentioned and which Councillor Saunders mentioned. The fact is, if the exhibition space is not in use, then as the Visitor Information Centre and the only one in Swale, there may be things that could be put on the walls so that that exhibition space still looks used, which can be removed and stored away when it's actually being used for its intended purpose. So actually it makes it even more use, if you like, and makes it look more lived in, which I think is something that we're all very conscious of. So that's that. And what I will do is, as Councillor Saunders mentioned, I'll move on to item 2 there, the Magna Carta exhibition. We have got some funding in place now. Having discussed with Sheila Sweetenberg and colleagues from Canterbury Christchurch University post this meeting that you have the minutes for, that was actually quite useful because their view is that the interpretation would necessarily change from what the original plans were, mainly due to this pandemic we're in, because a lot of what was originally suggested were touchscreens, which are now considered a no-no. But it was pointed out that we could do a lot of things via QR codes and interactive devices in that manner. And actually, my thought is that we do need to make a start. And if we have the cabinets and are able to stop paying KCC for the storage of our historic documents, and we can at least get them on display, then there could be a minimal cost to actually put the initial interpretation in, because we would need to see to a certain extent what's going to work. And to my knowledge, as long as you are fairly simple with your design of the interpretive boards, actually then they're a lot cheaper than you would think, and you can always change them fairly regularly. And one of the things that did come out of that was we want to try and at least keep one bit that can be changed fairly easily, so that your residents get to see something different when they take their friends in, whether that be once every 6 months or once a year or whatever you might change it. And that was how we looked at it. So I think we are at the stage now where we're looking at quotations for cabinets. There were 3 last time round. One of those is a Chinese company, which we think might be more difficult to import from. So we are looking at very least European sources of goods.
Can I so I'm keen to pick up on those points, Councillor Martin, but can we can we resolve the recommendation around the visitor information centre first? Unfortunately, I think Councillor Saunders has fallen off the call, so I don't know if he can vote, but my assumption is, having made a recommendation, we need to agree and approve that. And I think Councillor Saunders may be back with us now. Just remember it. Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Saunders, I was just saying we will return to Magna Carta, and there has been some sterling work going on there in the recommendations, but I feel we need to resolve the recommendation for the Visitor Information Centre. There was a recommendation put forward that a small working group is formed to further explore the proposal.
Yeah.
If I can extend that proposal, and I'm going to propose an amendment, if we could, it's certainly comfortable with a small working group to explore the proposal, if we can ensure that the financial considerations are covered within that small working group, and also again that the brief also includes retention of a reasonable proportion for an exhibition centre for the town council within that brief, then I think that's a sound recommendation. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, I would agree with you. In fact, that was, although it doesn't say it there, it does actually say it was actually discussed at that meeting, and that was definitely the thought behind it. So I'm quite happy to accept those amendments.
So I'm happy to second. Can we vote on that?
Definitely.
Great, thank you. And then on the Magna Carta, on Magna Carta, I keep using the definite article, don't I? Which is so the recommendation is they're going to set up an advisory board. Is that right, Councillor Martin? And is that advisory board going
to the idea being that we do need the conservation of the documents that we hold and the artifacts that we hold is such that professional advice will be needed, and a small advisory board to take that forward, and also to take forward, maybe as we come out of lockdown and what have you, as we look at our visitor economy much more stringently, that advisory board, we would hope, would give us the right advice about how to present and when changes are needed. It's my view, and certainly the view of Mr. Goodwin, I believe, that the problem with a lot of exhibitions of this type is that they get stale, and everyone comes along and says, this is marvelous. You get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people through the door the first year, and then gradually it tails off to, I remember the days of Faversham when the Fleur opened, they were getting sort of 5,000, 6,000 people through the door. Now they're getting 2. And I think we need to make sure that we can keep people interested and keep it refreshed. And that advisory board, I'm sure, would help us in that over the longer term.
As a professor of tourism, I'm sure that Mr. Goodwin has a few good ideas on how
exactly
to promote that. I mean, it's a sound recommendation as far as I can see. I've been to medieval castles in France that offer interactive applications with QR codes, for example, and they can be changed relatively repeatedly. The recommendation of advisory board seems sound to me. I'm happy to second that, unless anyone else has got any thoughts or
no,
questions.
I think that's right. No, that's
Councillor
right.
Martin, sorry.
Well, I was just voting.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Right. Take that to vote.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else in the Heritage Working Group, Councillor Martin? I think that's covered.
One I think I will to note is the approach about the Guildhall bell, which is a chime bell for the hours, I believe, and reinstating it. And it's we think it may be possible with very little cost to do a test over a weekend to see what people's reaction is, because obviously there are a lot of residences near the Guildhall, a lot of flats, a lot of small alleyways with 3, 4, 5 houses around them, and because the bell's not been struck for some time, it would be pertinent to test it before going all out and saying yes, we'll get this up and running and fully in the future. But
when does anyone know when it last worked regularly?
2000,
Yeah, how often was it ringing in the past?
every hour.
Oh, I'm not sure every hour. It would probably have to be between 10 and 6 or
Yeah,
something.
you can't do that.
You can't do
That's
it.
the problem. It rings on the hour, every hour, the hours. So
Right.
at 12 midnight, it rings 12 times. At 1, it rings at 1.
An engine must be a
Um,
surprising mechanism that doesn't let it ring
Yeah.
every hour. Yeah, could you tell us
Yeah.
between 10 and 6 or something?
That would be a considerable expense, which is, I believe, why the bell was originally disconnected, because it actually works off of the clock mechanism. You'd have to put an interrupt in the system with another clock, effectively, to stop that happening. So
Mary's
it's
Church
something
ring
that's,
every hour.
sorry,
Doesn't St Mary's Church ring every hour?
I believe it does, but it hasn't been for a while because they're still in the process of repairing things.
Anyway, I think it was just to know. Anyway, it feels like it's
Just
something.
to know, yeah.
Have a look. It needs discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. If there are no other further thoughts, should we move on? Are we ever happy to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Swale Area Committee. I think Councillor Saunders, you are proposing a paper here, aren't you? Putting forward a paper here.
Yeah.
I think you might be on mute if you're talking, Councillor Saunders.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you've got a brief paper about this, and you may remember we talked a bit about it at the last committee meeting. So basically, the Swale Eastern Area Committee has some special project funding, and a bidding round is going on for that, which ends on the 4th of March. And the proposal is that the town council puts in an application to that bidding round in order to run a project called Parish to Town Connections, which would be aiming to develop a network of cycling and walking routes linking Faversham as a town with its neighbouring villages. So in terms of this would, in terms of cycling links, you'd probably be looking up to about 10 miles away. So you'd go as far as Tenham, for example. And in terms of walking routes, you'd be looking at the kind of walking distance that people might do in order to come into town. So you'd probably be more focused on places like Graveney and Painters Forestall that are within good walking distance. The town council is now getting going on a project developing a local cycling and walking plan, and that's being delivered for us by Phil Jones Associates, who have designed the 20-mile-an-hour scheme. So there's a strong logic in this project running alongside it, and in the work being given to Phil Jones Associates. And I've asked them to quote for the work, which they're in the process of doing. So the value of the project is likely to be around about £10,000, and as well as me, I mean, these projects need support from borough councillors, and as well as me, Councillor Thomas and Councillor Gould in Horton have agreed to support the project. So you've got an outline of the objectives there, which are to identify a network of roads and public rights of way, to consult with the public and parishes about those routes, and then to present the results of that work in a way that can be used in the various local plans that are being developed. And ideally, we then want to have something that the public could use as well. So that's the project, and the proposal is that the committee endorses the town council putting in the project application to the area committee. I'd warn you that I mean, speaking as the vice chair, we do now have quite a lot of applications, so it will be we will have done very well if we do actually get the funding for this, because plenty of organisations have come forward to show an interest in the funding opportunity. So that's it. Thanks.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, no, great. No,
Thank you. Just one
I would support.
one thought on this. If the town council is putting this together, will those members of that committee who are also town councillors be excluded from voting on it? Because obviously it would be a pecuniary interest. Is that in my thought? That's just a quick question.
Thank you. That's a very good question. I raised it with the officers and they said, oh, that's a very good question. We need to think about it, because, yeah, the members of the Swale Area Committee, obviously quite a few of them are town councillors, but also quite a few of them have other interests. You know, they're on other boards of organisations that have put in. So I think the monitoring officer is probably scratching his head about how best to deal with this, but it will be taken account of, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Reynolds or Hook?
I think we're okay for tonight on that point, because as I understand it, Councillor proposes that this committee should back this, and Councillor Saunders is the only one who's a member of the area committee. I'm invited to attend, but I'm not a voting member, so that's fine. I don't think anyone else is. I think we're okay. I think it's an excellent proposal.
Yes.
We should definitely back it and hopefully get this money. Yeah.
Councillor Reynolds, you're in favour right here? Yeah.
Absolute backing. Yes, definitely back that proposal.
Do we as a committee need to vote on this recommendation? I think we probably do, in which case I'm happy to second if we hadn't asked for
unanimous, yeah.
Councillor Saunders, you're proposing it, so I'm sure we're recommending it. That's unanimous.
Yeah.
Good proposal.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Wish them well. Yeah.
Okay, I think that takes us pretty much to the end of the meeting. We have item 8, which is great. Item 8, number 2, is items for report, information items or items for the next agenda. I think the only thing is, as we started at the top of this meeting, it would be great if we could formally say on the invites that we'll accept questions from the public for the first 15 minutes.
Yes.
And then we've obviously got the 2-month end reports next month. So other than that, I'm not got anything else. Anyone have anything? If not, I shall draw this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
So.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.